In this section of the course, we are focusing on worksheets. In the Excel object model, worksheets are simply another object that you can access and work with, using methods and properties associated with the worksheet object. And quite honestly, that's what this session is all about, introducing you to the concept of working with worksheets as just another object in VBA. Let's get right to it then and take a look at how you can visualize worksheets in the Visual Basic Editor. I've already started Excel and loaded the companion workbook for this session. Let's go ahead and fire up the Visual Basic Editor and take a look at the Project Explorer. In the editor interface, it typically appears at the upper left corner of the screen. Each workbook is shown in this area as a project, and under each project you can see individual objects representing each worksheet in the workbook. In VBA, worksheets are considered part of the worksheets collection. In reality, though, Excel makes available 3 collections that can contain worksheet objects. The Sheets collection is all of the sheets in a workbook of any type. The Worksheets collection is all of the standard worksheets in the workbook. The Charts collection is all of the sheet-sized charts in the workbook. Many times you'll examine people's code and see them use the Sheets collection and the Worksheets collection almost interchangeably. This is fine for the simplest of workbooks, but it can lead to problems in more complicated workbooks. It definitely leads us to the potential for confusion over how these groups should be used. The easiest way to stop from getting confused with these 3 groups is to remember that the Worksheets and Charts collections are actually subsets of the Sheets collection. When you want to refer specifically to worksheets, it is best to be explicit and always reference the Worksheets collection. The way that you add new worksheets to a workbook is actually pretty straightforward. You simply use the add method with the Worksheets collection. The simplest way to create a worksheet is shown here in Module 1, where there's a simple one-line macro. Notice that we use the Worksheets collection, and then we use the add method with that collection in order to add a macro. You'll notice if you look down at the bottom of the screen here that the workbook, which is behind the Visual Basic Editor here, has 2 worksheets in it. You can see those 2 worksheets with the tabs, and you can also see it in the Project Editor, or the Project Explorer up here at the upper left-hand corner of the Visual Basic Editor. Once I run this macro, watch what happens with both of those areas. I can click Run, and sure enough, you can see that a sheet was added called Sheet 2. It's added at the beginning of the worksheet tabs down at the bottom, and it also appears within the objects for this particular workbook within the Project Explorer here in the Visual Basic Editor. Used in this way, the add method creates a new worksheet object and adds it to the worksheets collection. The worksheet represented by the object is automatically added just before whatever worksheet has focus in the current workbook. If you want to change this default behavior, all you need to do is use one or more of the 4 optional parameters with the add method. These optional parameters are before, after, count, and type. Now the before and after parameters are mutually exclusive. They allow you to specify where in the range of worksheets you specifically want this new worksheet added. You need to specify something that tells VBA exactly where in that range you want it entered. If you use the before parameter, then you can't use the after parameter. And if you use the after parameter, you can't use the before parameter. Again, they're mutually exclusive. The count parameter indicates the number of worksheets that you want to add. The default is to add 1 worksheet, but you can use any number for the count parameter that you want to, and that's how many worksheets will be added to the workbook. The type parameter specifies the type of sheet that you want to add. By default, it's a worksheet, or Excel worksheet is the enumeration for that type. but it could also be a worksheet of a different type if you had a need to do that. For most people who are beginning with macros, quite honestly, you don't set the type parameter. You just add a worksheet using the default, and you get a new worksheet added to your workbook with no problem at all. In order to use one of the parameters, just use the parameter name followed by a colon and an equal sign in the setting you want to use for the parameter. If you want to use multiple parameters, just separate those multiple parameters by commas. As an example, let's say that you want to add a worksheet after an existing worksheet. You would do that just by modifying this command line within the macro to include the parameter. So for instance, we would say after colon equals, and then we would specify where among the worksheets collection we want it added. So we would say worksheets, and in this case we'll add it after the important info worksheet. So we would say important info. Now it's very important that we type that exactly as we expect it to be, because what's going to happen is that VBA will find that worksheet, the important worksheet, important info worksheet, and it'll add the new worksheet right after it. So I'm going to go ahead and run this and watch at the bottom of the screen and at the Project Explorer, and you'll see that this adds a brand new worksheet. Sure enough, down below here you can see that it was added after the important info worksheet. It wasn't added after it up here in the Project Explorer, but that's because the Project Explorer always shows the worksheets in alphabetic order so that you can find them easily if you have a workbook that has many, many worksheets in it. As an example of how you can add worksheets in a macro, let's go and take a quick look over here at Module 2. This macro goes through and adds a worksheet for each day of the week, Saturday through Sunday. I know that the macro isn't correctly named, as its name suggests that it will add worksheets for the months of the year. Even so, if you look at the commands within the macro, you'll see that it names the worksheets after the days of the week. The macro works by first setting up some variables here near the beginning of the macro. Then it goes through a for next loop where it steps from 1 to 7 for each day of the week. Near the top of this for next loop, you can see that the BeGood variable is set to true. This variable is used as a flag to indicate if it is okay to create the worksheet or not. You can see that right after the BeGood variable is set, we use a for each loop to step through each of the existing worksheets in the workbook. We use the name property for each of those worksheets, which tells us the existing name of that worksheet. We use the lcase function to compare the lowercase name of the worksheet to the lowercase name of the day of the week. If these two match, then we set the BeGood variable to false. This is our indicator that there is already a worksheet that is named after whatever day of the week it is that we are working with. Once the for each loop is done, we check the value of the BeGood variable. If it is true, then we use the add method to do the actual adding of the worksheet. Notice that we specify the after parameter as being equal to whatever worksheet is in the last element of the worksheets collection. This is an important and useful trick for adding worksheets after all the existing worksheets. Since the count property returns the count of the number of worksheets in the worksheets collection, this usage always ensures that the new worksheet is added to the end of that collection. Once the new worksheet is added, it then is automatically activated. Thus, the ActiveSheet object references that newly added worksheet. We use the name property with the ActiveSheet object and set it equal to the name of the day of the week. Once we've performed this process with all the days of the week, 1 through 7, we then use the activate method to make the first worksheet in the worksheets collection active. Now I'm going to go ahead and run this macro, and if you keep your eyes on the worksheet tabs at the bottom of the Excel window, you'll notice how fast VBA is at adding in all of the worksheets. Well, that's it. The macro is done, and you can see all the new worksheets have been added and named as expected. Again, the heart of this macro is right here where the worksheet is actually added. Setting the after parameter is done here, adds the new worksheets to the end of the worksheets collection, and then we name the active worksheet using the name for the day of the week. You've now got a pretty good idea of how worksheets are viewed and worked with in Excel's object model, and therefore in VBA. You've discovered that they are treated as objects just like any other object, and that you affect them through the use of various methods and properties. You also discovered that you can easily add worksheets to a workbook by using the powerful Add method with the Worksheets group. By using the 4 optional parameters available with the Add method, you can control exactly where those new worksheets are placed in your workbook, and you can change the name of the worksheet by using the Name property. Now, I bet you are already thinking of ways that you can use the information in this session to streamline the work you already do with Excel. For instance, you may need to routinely create a series of worksheets every month, quarter, or year for your company. Build that process into a macro using the information in this session, and creating all the worksheets suddenly becomes a snap. In the next session, you'll expand your knowledge about how to work with worksheets by discovering how you can address and access them in your macros.